First, you need to know who Marcus Reyes was before that Tuesday. Not the version of him that people at Meridian Foods saw. The janitor in the gray uniform, the man with the mop and the quiet face who showed up at 9 p.m. and left at 5 a.m., but the real one, the one that only his daughter knew. His name was Marcus Alejandro Reyes. He was 36 years old. He had grown up in Albuquerque, the second of 4 children, in a household where money was counted in small, serious increments and nothing was wasted and everyone worked. His father had worked maintenance at a hotel for 22 years. His mother had cleaned offices. He had learned from both of them that there was no such thing as undignified work, only undignified attitudes toward it. He had carried that lesson into every job he had ever held, and he held it still, even on the nights when it was heavier than usual. He had married Sofia at 28. She was a teacher, 3rd grade, with a classroom full of drawings taped to every available surface and a laugh that could fill a parking lot. They had their daughter, Camila, when he was 30. Camila had arrived in the world with her mother's laugh and her father's eyes and a disposition toward joy so consistent and so total that Marcus had sometimes watched her sleep in those early months and felt the specific, almost frightening weight of loving something that much. Sofia had died 22 months ago, a car accident on a wet highway in November. She was driving home from a parent-teacher conference at 7 in the evening, and a truck ran a red light, and that was the sentence that ended the version of Marcus Reyes that had existed before it. He did not talk about this. He did not perform his grief for people. He had Camila, who was 5, and then 6, and now 6.5, and who still sometimes climbed into his bed at 3 in the morning without explanation, and he understood that her climbing into his bed was the most important thing in his life, and that everything else, the job, the apartment, the flickering lights, the quiet shame of never having quite enough, was in service of making sure she always had somewhere to climb to. Camila was in 1st grade at Emerson Elementary, 4 blocks from their apartment on Delancey Street. She was, according to her teacher, Mrs. Okafor, a child who listened in a way that most adults never learn to, which Marcus understood to mean that she had learned early to pay attention to the world because the world had taken something from her, and she wanted to understand why. He packed her lunch every night before his shift. Turkey and cheese on whole wheat, cut diagonally, because she had once mentioned that diagonal tasted better, and he had never stopped doing it since. A small bag of crackers. A clementine, peeled and separated into sections because her fingers were not yet strong enough to peel them herself. A note, always a note, folded into a small square, tucked under the clementine, with something on it. A drawing of a dog, because she wanted a dog. A bad joke. A small piece of information about the world. Did you know that octopuses have 3 hearts? Did you know that honey never expires? Did you know that you are the best thing I have ever done? He wrote those notes at the kitchen table at 8:30 in the evening before the bus came. His uniform already on, Camila asleep down the hall with her nightlight burning and her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. He wrote them in blue pen on whatever paper was available. Sometimes a sticky note, sometimes a torn corner of grocery bag, once the back of an electric bill that he had already opened and absorbed and set aside to deal with later. The notes were always the last thing he packed. He was superstitious about them, though he would not have called it superstition. He just knew that the note mattered. He knew it the way he knew other things that he had never needed to explain to anyone. Meridian Foods was a mid-sized grocery chain with 16 locations across the Southwest. The Delancey Street location was the 9th largest by revenue, according to a laminated chart posted in the back office that Marcus had read approximately 40 times while waiting for his supervisor to arrive for the start of shift briefing that happened, when it happened at all, between 10 and 10:15. The store was managed by a man named Dennis Pollard, who was 44, competent in the narrow way of someone who had learned the specific requirements of his job without ever becoming curious about anything beyond them, and who regarded the night cleaning crew with the particular brand of indifference that people reserve for things they have decided are beneath their notice. Marcus had worked for Dennis for 14 months. In that time, Dennis had learned his name approximately. He called him Mark, not Marcus. Mark, the shortened version, delivered without eye contact, usually while looking at something on his phone or walking in the opposite direction. Marcus had stopped correcting him after the second month, not out of defeat, but out of a quiet decision that his name was not something he needed Dennis Pollard to pronounce correctly for it to mean what it meant. The night crew was 4 people. Marcus, who handled the main floor and produce section. Gloria, a 60-year-old woman who had been at this store for 9 years and who brought homemade tamales on the last Friday of every month and set them in the break room without announcement, leaving it to whoever found them to understand the gift. Ray, 22, who was studying for his HVAC certification exam between mopping sessions and whom Marcus had quietly started quizzing on refrigerant pressure calculations during their breaks because Ray had confided once that he learned better out loud. And then there was Antoine, who called in sick more frequently than anyone commented on, and whose absence on any given night required the remaining 3 to redistribute his section without complaint. This was the world Marcus Reyes moved through 5 nights a week. It was not a glamorous world. It was not a world that anyone photographed or celebrated or held up as an example of anything. It was a world of fluorescent lights and mop water and stocking carts and the particular silence of a large commercial space emptied of its daytime purpose. And Marcus had made his peace with all of it a long time ago. What he had not made his peace with, what he could not, in the privacy of his own chest, fully make his peace with, was the rent. Delancey Street Apartments charged $1,140 a month. Marcus made $17 an hour, 5 nights a week, which worked out after taxes to approximately $20 to $100 a month, which left a margin of roughly $1,000 for utilities, food, Camila's after-school program, the medication she took for her asthma, the bus pass, the occasional pair of shoes, and whatever else the month decided to require of them, which was always more than he planned for and less than he feared. He was not behind on rent. He wanted to be clear about that, at least to himself. He had never been behind on rent. He had borrowed from his sister twice, both times with specific repayment plans that he had honored, and he had sold his truck, the good one, the one Sofia had called the Blue Monster, 18 months ago, and bought a used bicycle and a bus pass instead, and that had helped, and he had not regretted it, and he would not regret it. He was not behind on rent, but it was close. It was on certain months very close, and closeness of that kind has a specific weight. It sits between your shoulder blades when you're mopping a floor at 2 in the morning. It sits behind your eyes when you are writing a note to tuck under a clementine. It does not make you bitter if you're Marcus Reyes. It makes you careful. It makes you deliberate. It makes you the kind of person who reads the job board every Sunday night with a cup of coffee and a legal pad, looking for anything that might shift the margin by $200 a month, even $100, even $75. Underscore the thing that made Marcus Reyes remarkable, the thing that mattered, though no one at Meridian Foods knew to look for it, was not visible in his uniform or his mop or the quiet way he moved through the store at midnight. It was visible only in his relationship with his daughter, which was the most honest thing about him. If you had watched them together, say on a Saturday morning when Camila was home from school and Marcus was home from work, and the two of them were at the small kitchen table with its uneven leg, and she was drawing, and he was reading, and occasionally she would slide a drawing across the table for him to look at without comment, and he would look at it with the full, unhurried attention that most adults never give anything. If you had seen that, you would have understood something about Marcus Reyes that no job title and no pay stub and no flickering break room light could tell you. He was, in the precise and complete sense of the word, a devoted father. Not the perform kind, not the social media kind, the real kind, the kind that shows up in the small and unwitnessed moments, the diagonal cuts on the sandwich, the notes under the clementine, the quizzing of a 22-year-old on refrigerant pressure, because helping people learn was simply what Marcus did with any spare attention he had, the way water seeks the lowest ground. Camila knew this about her father without having the words for it. She knew it the way children know the essential things, completely, wordlessly, in her body. She knew he would always be there when she woke up from the bad dreams. She knew the notes would always be there in her lunchbox. She knew that when he said, "I'll be home before you wake up," he had never once been wrong. If this story is already pulling at something in you, hit the like button and subscribe to Quiet Kind, and drop a comment below telling me where in the world you're watching from. He was just a single dad. No one saw him coming. Keep watching. The Tuesday in early March began the way all the other Tuesdays had begun. Marcus woke at 6:30, made breakfast, scrambled eggs for Camila, toast for himself, orange juice for both of them, and sat at the kitchen table while Camila ate and talked about a dream she had about a purple elephant who could speak Spanish. Her Spanish was better than the elephant's, she noted, with the objective confidence of a child reporting a fact. Marcus agreed that this was probably true. He walked her to school at 8, kissed the top of her head at the entrance, watched her disappear through the double doors with her backpack bouncing, and stood outside for approximately 10 seconds longer than was necessary, the way he always did before walking home. He slept from 9 until 2:30. He picked Camila up at 3:15, walked her home, helped her with the worksheet about community helpers. She drew the janitor with careful attention, coloring the mop in exact circular strokes, and showed it to Marcus without comment, and made dinner. Pasta with butter and a little garlic, because that was what they had, and it was enough, and he knew how to make it good. He tucked her in at 8. She asked him to tell her the one about the coyote and the moon, which was a story he had invented approximately 400 times with minor variations, and which she never tired of. He told it. She fell asleep before the ending. He stood in her doorway for a moment, looking at her, the rabbit tucked under her arm, the nightlight throwing soft gold across her face. And he thought, the way he often thought in that doorway, that he did not regret any of the things he had given up. He regretted only what she had lost, which was not his to give back, which was the one problem he could not fix, no matter how many jobs he worked or how many nights he stood in fluorescent light with a mop and a quiet face and a decision to keep going. He made her lunch. Turkey and cheese diagonal. Crackers. Clementine separated. He wrote the note on the back of a receipt from the gas station on 10th Street. Did you know that elephants can recognize themselves in a mirror? Only a few animals can do that. You can too. I love you. He folded it into a small square and tucked it under the clementine. Then he put on his uniform and went to work. Meridian Foods on a Tuesday night was quieter than a Thursday, but louder than a Sunday. The store closed at 11. By 11:15, the last of the customers had been shepherded out, the registers closed down, and the daytime staff filtered into the parking lot in small conversational clusters. By 11:30, the night crew had their carts and their equipment, and the store was theirs. Marcus started in produce, the way he always did. There was a rhythm to the produce section at night that he had come to appreciate. The coolness, the smell of something green and recent, the particular satisfaction of wiping down the misting units and leaving the whole section gleaming for the morning shift. He worked from the back to the front, methodically, the way his father had taught him to clean anything. Start where no one is watching and work toward the light. He had been at it for about 40 minutes when he heard Gloria's voice from the canned goods aisle. Not loud. Gloria was not a loud woman, but with a quality of restrained alarm that made Marcus stop what he was doing and listen. "Dennis." A pause. "Dennis, we have a situation in the break room." Marcus did not run to the break room. He walked, quickly, with the cart trailing behind him. What he found there was not what he had expected. sitting at the small table in the corner, the one with the wobbly chair that everyone knew about and no one had replaced, was a woman he had never seen before. She was wearing what appeared to be, incongruously, the Meridian Foods uniform. The dark green polo, the khaki pants, the name tag. The name tag, said Elena. She was perhaps 40, with dark hair pulled back and the kind of composed, precise face that held its expressions deliberately. And at this particular moment, what her face was holding was something she was clearly working very hard not to show. Her hands were flat on the table. She was looking at a point approximately 2 feet in front of her. And her eyes, which Marcus noticed only because he had spent the last 22 months learning to read the specific topography of people who were containing something large, her eyes were full. Not crying, not yet, but the held breath before it. Dennis was standing in the doorway with his phone in his hand and an expression of complete uncertainty, which on Dennis looked almost exactly the same as his expression of complete indifference. "I don't know who she is," he said to Marcus, as if Marcus had asked. "She says she's night crew. She's not on my roster." Marcus looked at the woman. She looked back at him. For a single second, something passed between them. The specific recognition of two people who are both, in their own ways, trying very hard to hold it together in a room where holding it together is the only option available. "She's on my roster," Marcus said. Dennis looked at him. "Temp," Marcus said. "We talked about this on Friday. Ray can't work the dairy section with the certification exam coming up. I asked you about a temp." None of this was true, but it was delivered with the same flat, unhurried confidence that Marcus brought to everything, and Dennis Pollard had long ago stopped being curious enough about the night crew to fact-check anything that came out of that department. "Fine." Dennis looked at his phone. "I'll be in the office." He left. The break room was quiet. Gloria appeared briefly in the doorway, looked at the woman, looked at Marcus, and disappeared with the practiced discretion of someone who has seen many situations and learned when her job is to be elsewhere. Marcus pulled out the chair across from the woman and sat down. He did not ask her if she was all right. He had learned, in the years since Sofia, that this was often the worst question, not because it was unkind, but because it demanded a performance from people who were not currently capable of performing. He simply sat and waited and let the silence be what it was. After a moment, she said, "Thank you. Don't mention it." Another silence. Then that was quick thinking. "I've covered for people before." He paused. "You okay?" She looked at him for a moment with an expression that was almost surprised. Not at the question, but at something in the way it was asked, or perhaps in the fact that the question was followed by nothing. No lean forward, no expectant face, no performance of concern waiting to be rewarded with information. Just the question, offered plainly, and the willingness to accept whatever answer came. "I will be," she said. He nodded. He believed her. "I'm Marcus." Elena. A beat. For tonight. He did not ask what she meant by that. He understood, in the way that people who pay attention understand things, that it was not the name she used for everything. He was not concerned. Names were the last things that told you who someone actually was. "You want coffee?" he said. "It's bad, but it's hot." Something moved across her face then, not quite a smile, but the architecture of one, the preparation for it. "Yes," she said. "Please." He got up and made it. The coffee machine in the break room was exactly as bad as advertised, a single-serve unit that had been purchased sometime in the early 2000s and which produced a liquid that was technically coffee in the same way that a gas station hot dog is technically food. He poured it into the least chipped mug he could find, which had a faded logo for a half marathon someone had run in 2014, and set it in front of her. She wrapped both hands around it. The gesture was unconscious, automatic, the gesture of someone who needed something solid to hold. "You don't have to explain anything," Marcus said. He was putting his cleaning cart back in order, not looking at her, giving her the relief of not being watched. "You can just sit here until you're ready to go." "That's not." She stopped. Started again, more carefully. "I came in to do a walkthrough. I do them sometimes. Unannounced. I like to see what the stores look like when they don't know they're being looked at." A pause. "We have 16 stores. This is the 9th one I've done this year." Marcus aligned the bottles in his cart. He did not say anything. I was in the produce section, she continued. The night manager, your Dennis, he didn't recognize me out of context. I had the uniform made because I wanted to see the floor without being seen. She looked at the coffee. I heard 2 of your day staff in the break room at shift change. They were talking about the night crew. About you specifically. She paused. It wasn't kind. Marcus was quiet for a moment. What did they say? That you thought you were better than the job. That you had, I believe the exact phrase was, delusions of grandeur. Because you quizzed the young one on his exam. She looked at him directly. Because you care about things. The break room hummed. The fluorescent light overhead flickered once. The 11-day flicker still unresolved and steadied. Marcus said, people say things. They do. She looked at her hands. I also heard what happened on the receiving dock last month. With the produce order that came in wrong and the vendor who was, apparently, very difficult. She paused. The assistant manager was going to send it back. The whole order. You spent 2 hours sorting it manually so the store didn't lose the delivery window. Nobody asked you to do that. You just did it. He had, in fact, spent those 2 hours. He had not considered it remarkable. The produce would have been wasted. The store would have lost the delivery credit. It had seemed, at the time, like the obvious thing to do. And he had done it. And then he had finished his shift and gone home and written a note about sea turtles for Camila's lunchbox. I'm just telling you what I heard, the woman said. She looked up at him. Before I sat down in here. Why did you sit down? A long pause. The fluorescent light held. The coffee steamed gently between her hands. Because I walked through this entire store, she said slowly, and I looked at the reports, and I know the margins, and I know the shrinkage numbers, and I know which departments are underperforming, and I can tell you the SKU count of every aisle in this building. She stopped, and then I came in here, and I read the note you left on the community board. Marcus went still. There was a small corkboard in the break room. He had not put it there. It had always been there. People posted things, shift swap requests, a flyer for a cousin's quinceanera, a note about whose turn it was to clean the coffee machine. About 3 months ago, he had added something. Not because he was trying to make a statement. Just because Camila had drawn something at the kitchen table, a small pencil drawing of the store with the aisles in their correct positions, and a small figure with a mop labeled Papa, and at the top, in her careful first-grade lettering, my dad works here, and he is the best. He had meant to keep it. He had brought it to work one night when he was short on space in his pockets, and he had pinned it to the board and then not taken it down, and it had been there since. The woman was looking at the board now, at the drawing. How old, she said. 6. She drew that herself? She draws everything herself. She's serious about it. He paused. Her mother was a teacher. Camila got the careful part from both of us. The woman looked at the drawing for a long moment. And Marcus, who had spent 22 months learning to read the silences of someone who was holding something enormous and trying to hold it quietly, watched her face do what faces do when they encounter something unexpected in a moment they were not prepared for. Not dramatic, not performed, just the small, involuntary opening of someone who has been sealed up for a long time and has just, without warning, felt a crack form. She did not cry. She pressed her lips together and looked at the drawing of the small figure with the mop and the word Papa in first-grade handwriting, and she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, very quietly, I have a son. He's 8. A pause that had the texture of something carefully managed. I haven't seen him in 6 weeks. His father and I, we're in the middle of something legal. Something complicated. She stopped. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm telling you this. Because it's 2 in the morning in a break room, Marcus said, and you're holding a bad cup of coffee. And sometimes that's the right moment. She looked at him. There was something in her expression then that he recognized. Not grief, exactly, but its cousin. The specific exhaustion of someone who is very good at their job and very capable in the world and who has learned, at some cost, that capability does not protect you from the things that matter most. I'm going to need to speak to the store manager, she said finally. Her voice had returned to something more formal, more contained. But not entirely, not the way it had been before she sat down. Something remained open that had been closed. There are things about this location that need to change. Staffing levels, maintenance requests, the lights. She glanced up at the flickering panel. How long has that been going? 11 days, Marcus said. Something crossed her face. 11 days. I reported it on day 2. And day 7. She looked at him. Then she took a breath, set down the mug, and reached into the pocket of the green polo. She removed a phone, not the battered kind, not the cracked screen kind, but the other kind, the quiet and effortless kind, and made a note. Then she looked up. Marcus, she said, and she said it correctly, all 3 syllables with the full weight of a name. I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer honestly, not the way you'd answer a supervisor. The way you'd answer someone who is asking because she actually wants to know. He waited. What does this store need, she said. Not by the numbers. Not what the reports say. What does it actually need? The break room was very quiet. Down the hall, he could hear the distant sound of Ray's mop hitting the linoleum in dairy, the rhythmic slap and pull of it. He could hear Gloria's cartwheels. He could hear the hum of the refrigeration units, the specific, constant frequency of a building that never fully slept. Marcus Reyes thought about the produce order and the 2 hours and the words delusions of grandeur. He thought about the notes under the clementines and the diagonal cuts on the sandwich and the corkboard drawing of the small figure with the mop. He thought about a lot of things in a very short period of time, the way you do when the question you've been quietly carrying finally gets asked out loud. And then he told her, plainly, specifically, without performance. He told her about the understaffing and the maintenance backlog and the way the receiving dock ran on 3 people when it was built for 5. He told her about Ray's certification exam and what it would mean for the store if they could flex his schedule for the next 6 weeks. He told her about the bread vendor and the relationship that had gone cold because no one at the management level had bothered to maintain it. He told her about the community board and the fact that 3 people on the night crew lived within 4 blocks of the store and the way those 4 blocks looked at 9 in the morning versus 9 at night, and what that meant for the people who worked here. He talked for about 8 minutes. He did not raise his voice. He did not editorialize. He said what he had seen and what he had thought about what he had seen with the same unhurried precision he brought to everything. And when he was finished, the break room was very quiet. The woman looked at him for a long moment. All right, she said. That was all. All right. But she said it the way people say it when they mean it in full. Not as a dismissal, not as a placeholder, but as a decision arriving at the end of a thought that had been building for some time. She stood. She straightened the green polo. She looked at the corkboard one more time, at the small pencil drawing, at the figure with the mop, at the word Papa in first-grade handwriting, and something in her expression settled into something that was not quite resolution, but was in the direction of it. The manager will be contacted tomorrow morning, she said. There will be a facilities review this week. The lights will be fixed by Friday. She paused. I'd like you to submit a written account of everything you just told me. Not to Dennis. Directly to regional operations. I'll send you the contact. Marcus looked at her. You'll have my name by then, she said. And there was something in the way she said it. Not a warning, not a reveal, just a fact offered simply, that told him everything he needed to know about who she actually was, and why she had a uniform made, and why Dennis Pollard had not recognized her, and why she had walked through 16 stores this year, looking at what people looked like when they didn't know they were being looked at. She held out her hand. He shook it. Thank you for the coffee, she said. It was terrible, he said. Yes. Something that was almost a smile. It was. She left. Marcus stood in the break room for a moment. The fluorescent light flickered once, steadily, and held. Down the hall, Ray's mop kept its rhythm. Gloria's cartwheels moved. The store breathed around him, enormous and cool and largely indifferent, the way stores are at 2 in the morning when no one important is watching. Marcus picked up the half-marathon mug and washed it in the small break room sink with the same care he brought to everything. He set it upside down on the drying rack. He took one more look at the corkboard, at the drawing, at Papa, at the small figure with the mop who was, according to his daughter, the best, and then he went back to work. Underscore. If this story has found its way to you, Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story from Quiet Kind. Your support is what keeps these stories coming, and there are so many more waiting to be told. The lights were fixed on Thursday. Not Friday, Thursday, which was the first indication that whatever had shifted on Tuesday night had shifted with some force. The second indication was the email Marcus received at 6:17 in the morning on Wednesday to the personal address he had listed on his original employment application and which no one at Meridian Foods had ever used in 14 months. The email was from the regional operations coordinator, a woman named Jacinda Park, and it included a direct line and an invitation to submit the account he had been asked for, at his convenience, addressed specifically to the chief executive of Meridian Foods Group. He read it twice in the kitchen, with his coffee and the gray morning light coming through the window over the sink. He thought about the woman in the break room, about the green polo with the wrong name on the tag, about the way she had held the bad coffee with both hands like she needed something solid, and the way she had looked at the drawing on the corkboard, and the 6 weeks since she had seen her son, and the things she had said, "I like to see what the stores look like when they don't know they're being looked at." He thought about what that meant, to build something large enough that you had to go undercover to see it clearly. To have 16 stores and a board and a legal situation and a son who was 8 years old, and to still, at 2 in the morning in a break room in Albuquerque, need to hold a cup of something warm with both hands. He composed the account carefully. He took his time. He said what he had seen, specifically without embellishment and without grievance, the way his father had taught him to say things that mattered, with the facts in the right order and the feelings underneath them where they belonged, solid and unperformed. He submitted it at 9:47 in the morning, just before he went to sleep. With the name, when he learned it, arrived via the same regional email chain 3 days later. A restructuring announcement sent to all Meridian Foods employees, the kind of email that most night crew staff skimmed or deleted or did not read at all. Marcus read it the way he read everything, fully from the beginning. The announcement was signed by Elena Cortez-Ren, Chief Executive Officer, Meridian Foods Group. It outlined a series of operational changes effective immediately across all 16 locations. Maintenance response protocols, staffing benchmarks, a revised grievance and suggestion system routed directly to regional operations, bypassing individual store management for certain categories of concern, a new schedule flexibility policy for employees pursuing professional certifications. At the end of the announcement, there was a section that was not standard corporate language. It was shorter. It read differently from the rest, less formal, more direct, as if it had been written by someone who had arrived at the end of a long document and decided, at the last moment, to say something true. These changes come from listening to the people who run our stores at 2 in the morning when no one is watching. Those people are not invisible. They have never been invisible. We were simply not paying attention in the right direction. Marcus read that section 3 times. Then he folded the email, not literally, it was an email, but in his mind, the way he folded the notes he wrote for Camila. He filed it somewhere important. Underscore. On a Thursday afternoon in late March, approximately 3 weeks after the Tuesday that changed things, Marcus was sitting at the kitchen table with Camila when a knock came at the door. Camila was drawing a detailed rendering of the solar system because Mrs. Okafor had done a unit on space and Camila had become, in the span of 4 days, seriously invested in the orbital period of Neptune. Marcus was checking the job board, not because he was looking for anything, The raise that had come through with the operational restructuring had shifted the margin considerably, but out of habit. Some habits outlast the need for them. He opened the door. Elena Cortez Ren was not wearing the green polo. She was wearing a jacket the color of winter sky and carrying what appeared to be a very small, very serious-looking plant in a terracotta pot. She looked, in the afternoon light, like someone who had slept recently and was incrementally remembering what that felt like. Behind her, at the end of the walk, was a black car. In the back seat of the black car, visible through the window, was a boy who appeared to be about 8 years old, looking at something on a tablet with the focused intensity of a person who has been in a car for some time and is determined to make the most of it. "I wanted to bring something," she said. "For the apartment." She held out the plant. "I didn't know what you had." "We have a cactus," Marcus said. Camila named it Gerald. Gerald is a good name for a cactus. She thought so. He stepped back from the door. She came in. Camila looked up from her Neptune diagram, assessed the situation with the rapid accuracy of a child who has learned to pay attention to people, and said, "Are you the one from the store?" "I am," Elena said. "Dad told me about you." A pause. "Not your name, just that you were there." "That's accurate." Camila looked at the plant. "What's its name?" Elena looked at Marcus. He looked at Camila. "You pick," he said. Camila considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important decisions. She studied the plant for a long moment. Its small, precise leaves, its terracotta pot, its overall demeanor. "Fernando," she said finally. "Fernando," Elena repeated. "Gerald and Fernando," Camila said, nodding. She returned to Neptune. Marcus and Elena stood in the kitchen for a moment. The afternoon light came through the window over the sink. The apartment was small and clean and specific. Camila's drawings on the refrigerator, the uneven table leg that Marcus had shimmed with a folded piece of cardboard and had still not fixed properly, the corkboard by the door where the important things were posted. Her drawing of Papa with the mop was there too, a copy, because the original was still at the store on the break room board, where Marcus had decided to leave it. "How is he?" Marcus said, gesturing toward the car. "Better." She set Fernando on the windowsill. "We have an arrangement now. Temporary, but moving towards something more settled." She paused. "He asked me yesterday what I did at work. I told him I fixed things that were broken." A brief pause. "He asked if that meant I was a mechanic." "What did you say?" "I said sort of." She looked at the windowsill. "He wants to come to the store sometime, to see where I go." "Bring him," Marcus said. "Camila can show him where Gerald lives. We have Gerald and now Fernando." He paused. "She'll want to name something else." Something that had been very carefully assembled in Elena Cortez Ren's expression rearranged itself, gently, into something that was not quite relief and not quite gratitude, but contained elements of both. Something that looked, more than anything else, like a person arriving somewhere they had not known they were trying to get to. "Thank you," she said, "for what you told me." In the break room. "You asked the right question," Marcus said. "Most people don't." She looked at him for a moment. Then she looked at Camila, who was adding Neptune's moons to her diagram with focused precision, naming each one under her breath as she drew it. "She's remarkable," Elena said. "She's her mother," Marcus said. "And she's herself." He paused. "Those are the same thing, mostly." Outside, the March afternoon was moving toward evening. The boy in the car had put down his tablet and was now watching the apartment window with the direct, uncalculating attention of a child who has decided something is interesting. Camila looked up from her diagram, noticed him, and held up her drawing of Neptune so he could see it through the glass. He pressed closer to the window. She turned the page so the moons were facing him. Marcus watched this happen. He did not say anything. There was nothing to say that would improve on it. They're the photograph that Marcus Reyes keeps in the kitchen drawer with the things that matter. It was taken at the Emerson Elementary Spring Fair in April on a Saturday when the afternoon was warm enough that everyone's jackets were tied around their waists. It shows 3 people standing in front of a face-painting booth. Marcus with Camila on his shoulders, her hands over his eyes, and her Neptune diagram rolled up under her arm. Beside them, somewhat formally, somewhat less formally than she had intended to be, Elena Cortez Ren, with her son Mateo beside her, 8 years old, with a small star painted on his cheek and an expression of complete, uncomplicated satisfaction. They're not looking at the camera. Someone has said something, or Camila has done something, or Mateo has spotted something in the distance. Whatever it was, all four of them have turned the same direction, and their faces are open in the particular way that faces are open when no one is performing and nothing is being managed, and the afternoon is warm and the world has, for this moment, simplified itself into something that can be held. Camila drew the photograph afterward from memory in her careful first-grade hand. She got the star on Mateo's cheek exactly right. She labeled it, "A good day." She put in the drawer with her mother's photograph and the river stone and the birthday card. Marcus added his half-marathon mug to the kitchen cabinet beside the coffee maker. He still used it every morning. Some things you keep because they work. Some things because they mean something. The best things do both. Underscore. The lights in the Meridian Foods break room have not flickered since Thursday of that first week. The maintenance log shows the repair, fluorescent ballast replacement, 1 hour, resolved. A small thing. The kind of thing that should have taken 2 days from a report, not 11. Ray passed his HVAC certification exam in May. Gloria's tamales appeared on the last Friday of every month without announcement and kept appearing. Antoine, who had called in sick 17 times in the past year, was moved to a daytime position better suited to his particular situation, which turned out to be a child care scheduling problem that no one had bothered to ask about. The bread-vendor relationship was repaired quietly by a regional coordinator who had read Marcus's account and made a call. Marcus Reyes still works nights. Not at Meridian Foods. He was offered a regional operations coordinator position in April, and he took it because it was the right thing and because the margin mattered and because he had spent 3 years proving he could see what needed fixing, and here was someone handing him the authority to fix it. He goes in at 7 in the morning now, in a building with reliable lights, and he is home when Camila wakes up. He still packs her lunch. Turkey and cheese diagonal. Crackers. Clementine. The notes are still there, under the clementine, on whatever paper is available with the same information. Did you know that octopuses have 3 hearts? Did you know that elephants remember everything? Did you know that you are the best thing I have ever done? She is 7 now. She still draws everything. Gerald the cactus and Fernando the plant are on the kitchen windowsill, side by side in the afternoon light, and she has given Fernando a small hand-drawn sign that says hello in her careful first-grade lettering, because she thinks plants should be welcomed. On the corkboard by the door, because there's always a corkboard in the places where things that matter get posted, there's a new drawing. A family, labeled Papa, me, Gerald, Fernando, and in the corner, added recently in pencil, 2 small figures, one with a star on his cheek. Camila, when asked about the 2 small figures, said, "Those are our friends." Then she went back to drawing. There is something that Marcus Reyes understood before any of this happened, and which he still understands now, and which does not require the story to be told in order to be true. But perhaps it is easier to hold once the story has been told. A person who is unseen is not invisible. There is a difference. Invisible means you are not there. Unseen means the person doing the looking has not yet understood where to direct their attention. These are not the same thing. One is about your existence. One is about someone else's failure to look correctly. Marcus Reyes had always been there. He had been there in the produce section and the break room and the receiving dock and the community board. He had been there in the diagonal cuts and the clementine sections and the notes folded small. He had been there in the refrigerant pressure calculations delivered to a 22-year-old between mopping sessions. He had been there in the 8 minutes of plain, unhurried truth delivered to a woman who had finally asked the right question. He did not need to be seen in order to be who he was. That is the part that cannot be taken, and the part that was never in danger, and the part that, in the end, is what the right eyes are always looking for. And the right eyes, if they are patient and honest and willing to ask a real question and sit in a break room at 2 in the morning with a bad cup of coffee, the right eyes will always, eventually, find what they are looking for. Underscore. Thank you for sitting with this story all the way to the end. The people who stay for the whole story are the ones who understand it. If it moved you, the videos on your screen right now are waiting to do the same. And if you haven't subscribed yet, come home. Quiet Kind has a story for you.